And it was in a board meeting that I raised my hand and said, why not me? Why not give me a shot? I know the business. I know the why. I don't necessarily, and I will never understand the how you install that outlet, how you install that light fixture. But I can answer the question of why we install the light fixture. Why is it that we are so great? What makes Besco special? And why not give me a shot for that reason? Like, I know the business, I know the people, and it might be worth just trying versus going out and hiring somebody and taking the risk that they come into an organization and they do make the changes. Why not give me a shot? And had it not been for my own voice, standing up for myself, it would never have happened. And that was the tipping point for how I got into the role I'm in, is because it was at that moment the board was considering going in a completely different direction. And they stopped in their tracks. They listened to what I had to say. They asked my boss at the time, like, what do you think? And his response was, there is no one in this organization that knows it better than she does. So if you would consider promoting somebody from within, she is your only option. Otherwise, you need to go out and look externally. And the board listened. The advocacy for myself, the moment of, I think I could do it. I put my fears aside and realized that I had something to offer, that my sense of wanting to protect what has been built for so long outweighed my own fear of potentially failing or not doing well. I had a sense of like duty that I owed the people that were here to try to keep the organization intact and feeling the same way and being the same organization that we knew we could be. That was a defining moment in my life, was being able to stand up in a room full of people that weren't necessarily my advocates, but did give me the opportunity, and they listened.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of richness in that story, from moment of, okay, how do I lead immediately? You know, the CEO's got to leave tomorrow morning. Things have changed. Like we always have a plan until life punches us in the face. I think it's Mike Tyson that said that, you know. And then there's a shift. And I really like how when you talk about the relationship you have with the president, you know, you just I didn't hear a single finger pointing. He didn't get me. It was really, I didn't understand. We didn't understand each other. We weren't on the same page. And there was no undermining. There's no, you know, it's just, this is what I believe. And the fact that you paused and said it out loud, hey, I think this may be a chance this may be the inflection point for me to leave the organization. I'm leaving it better than I got here. I can leave head held high. And there's so much strength and leadership that comes from navigating through, looking inwards, going to peers and outwardly saying these things that need to be said, but then, you know, letting it sit but being ready when the moment struck. Were you planning on walking into that board meeting that day? You know, how long had you been working on that stand up and why not me speech? Was that something that happened very organically, or is it something that you realized over a period of time that this was your opportunity to raise your hand and, you know, and grab the mantle, so to speak?
Dusty, I'm going to tell you, and most people do not believe me, but I promise, I swear, the board meeting agenda was put together and the conversation had derailed from the agenda. I had no knowledge that the conversation was going to go and pivot because it wasn't my board meeting, right? The CEO at this time had come back into the organization. He was leading the board meeting. He had put his agenda together and he was talking about another topic. And I don't recall exactly what that topic was, but I remember there being a question that got asked. And Wayne's answer to that question was, guys, remember, I gave you 1 year and we're 6 months through that 1 year. You have 6 months left to find my replacement. And to my knowledge, you have done nothing. And it was at that moment that and I'm sitting at the end of the table looking down, and the look on the faces of the board members was this like complete surprise, the realization of, oh crap, he's right. What are we going to do? And I think if I remember correctly, I remember Wayne saying at that time, I think you all thought that I would be staying. I'm not. I am going to be leaving in 6 months. So December, I am out. And there was, that aha moment in that room, and you could tell some of the whisperings and what are we going to do? And amongst themselves, they were talking about, do we call this company? Do we call this person? Maybe they could start conspiring with one another of like, what are we going to do? What's the next step? Who do we call? How do we put this plan of action in place? This is ours. And I remember them telling him, we thought you were looking for your replacement. We want you to know who that is. And his response was, I'm not going to be around. This isn't my choice. This is yours. I had no knowledge that this conversation was going to take place in that meeting at that moment, at that time. I hadn't had any conversations leading up to that conversation. It was completely spontaneous. I then raised my hand at the end of the table. And I can't tell you why. I have no idea what the world came over me at that moment in time. It was just as they were talking about bringing somebody from the outside into this organization, it terrified me. And it was one of those moments that did not sit right because I knew how I felt having had a president who was in that seat that I felt like was starting to shift the organization in a manner that he wanted, and it didn't fit right for me. And I knew it didn't fit right for some of the other people in the organization either. And so it was at that, I think it was just pure fear. It was, I love this company so much. I want to be here. But if they bring somebody in, this could be my exit. And so I think out of fear, I raised my hand and said, I think statistically, 70% of hires that you bring in from the outside, especially in C-suite positions, fail. Mm-hmm. And the idea that we could have multiple people, like this churn of leaders in our company, was going to create hesitancy and skepticism across our culture. And we have such a good, strong culture, and it's unique because we are a family company. We are a family business. We are a big company, but family valued business. And out of just pure fear, it was this, I know at least I could keep that intact. I knew what we were. I knew the why behind what we were. And I knew that if they had just given me a shot, I knew that I could at least, if nothing else, I could just continue doing exactly what we were doing because I knew it. I didn't know if I could grow it. I didn't know if I could do all the things that a CEO is supposed to be able to do, but I knew that I could do the status quo. And I thought at that moment, why not me? Why not give me a shot then? And let's see if I could make something happen. It's got to be better than 70% failure rate. And that, I think those were exactly my words. Like, it's got to be worth giving me a shot. I've got to be better than 70%. The eyes kind of went off and it was like, well, and that's what they said. Put your plan together. Show me how you would do it, because I wasn't coming from operations. And at that time in our portfolio of companies, I would have been the first president, first one female president, first female under 40, and first female that didn't come from an operations background. And so I needed to be able to prove to the ownership group why they should invest in me and my ideas.
There's the old saying that, luck favors the prepared, or something like that. It's the hard work you do day in and day out that when opportunity knocks, you're ready to grab it. And it sounds like this was your opportunity. It knocked, and it wasn't planned. It wasn't premeditated. It sounds terrible to say it that way. It wasn't something that you were working on walking in. It was all of the work that you put in for years before to be prepared for that moment.